So let's talk about something we all do, but maybe we don't really talk about. It's that feeling of being uncomfortable with silence. In this explainer, we're going to dig into why that quiet can sometimes feel like a threat and what actually happens when we stop running and just listen to the sound of our own mind. I want to start by asking you something directly. And yeah, it might feel a little pointed, but have you ever seriously asked yourself this? Why is it that the very second you're alone, your first instinct is to grab for a distraction? You know exactly what I'm talking about, right? It's those little moments, that brief, quiet ride in an elevator, the 2 minutes you're waiting for your coffee, or, that critical moment between your head hitting the pillow and actually falling asleep. What happens? Almost automatically, the phone comes out, the podcast goes in. We do anything to fill that empty space. And if we're being really honest with ourselves here, this isn't just about killing time. It's not really about boredom. It's something much deeper than that. It's a kind of subtle, maybe even unconscious fear. And this quote just nails it. This is why we do it. Silence is like a giant mirror that we haven't dared to look into for a long, long time. The moment we shut off all that noise from the outside, we can't ignore the noise on the inside anymore. And let's face it, that can be a really intimidating place to hang out. What's so wild about this is how it kind of maps out our escape routes, right? We're drowning out our own thoughts with someone else's on a podcast. We're blasting music to try and overpower those old regrets. And we just scroll and scroll and scroll to numb out the sharp little edges of our anxieties. We've gotten really, really good at avoiding ourselves. But what if there's another way? Okay, so this brings us to a really core idea, and that is giving yourself permission to feel. Look, you are not a marketing campaign for happiness. Life isn't about being perfectly polished all the time. It's about giving yourself permission to be a real, complex human being. I want you to just take a second and let that sink in. Just read those words. It sounds so simple, doesn't it? But it is so incredibly powerful. This is the one thing we almost never give ourselves, especially in a world that's always telling us to be positive. And here's the bottom line. These feelings, they aren't error messages. Feeling sad doesn't mean you're broken. Having anxiety doesn't mean you're failing at life. It just means you're human. This is the full spectrum, the whole messy, beautiful, and sometimes chaotic experience of being alive. So often we look outside of ourselves for approval. We want someone else to tell us it's okay to feel what we're feeling. But the real deep acceptance we're searching for, it doesn't come from out there. It's an inside job. It starts when you finally turn around and face your own difficult feelings. And you say this. You just acknowledge them. You don't have to like them. You definitely don't have to agree with them, but you stop fighting them. You just see them and you let them know it's okay for them to be there. And that leads us perfectly to this next big idea. Witnessing, not fixing. This is a total shift in how we approach our emotions. It's not about trying to solve your sadness or engineer your own happiness. It's about changing your job from being a mechanic of your mind to just being an observer. This right here is the game changer. Our gut instinct is always to fix things, to get rid of the bad feelings. But what if that's not their point? What if their purpose isn't to be solved, but just to be seen, to be witnessed by you? So this allows for this really powerful way to reframe everything. Think of your emotions as data points. They're not good or bad, they're just information. Sadness is data, anxiety is data, joy is data. They're all just little messengers trying to tell you something about what's going on inside, not enemies you have to go to war with. And all of this brings us to this final, beautiful idea. There is so much dignity in just being real. Real strength isn't about pretending you've got it all figured out. It's about having the guts to be a work in progress. So if you take just one thing away from all of this, let it be this permission slip. You are allowed to be messy. You're allowed to be quiet, even if it feels weird at first. And you are absolutely 100% allowed to be unfinished. So I'll leave you with this question to carry with you. What do you think might happen? What could you discover in that quiet space that you've been avoiding for so long? What kind of wisdom or peace or truth is just waiting for you right underneath all that noise? All right, let's talk about something I think we all feel, but maybe we don't have a name for. It's that deep, kind of weird discomfort with silence. You know what I'm talking about? Today, we're going to get into it. I mean, really, think about it for a second. Why are we so afraid of empty space? The moment a conversation hits a pause or you turn off the radio in the car, what's that very first instinct? Yeah, today we're exploring exactly why we have this impulse to fill every single empty moment with something. So let's start by putting a name to this feeling, because it actually has one, and it comes from the world of art, but it perfectly explains what's going on in our heads today. It's called horror vacui. Kind of dramatic, right? It literally means fear of the void. Originally, artists used it to describe the need to fill every single inch of a canvas with detail. But now, well, now it's about us. We're filling every second of our lives with noise. And that's exactly why silence can feel so unbelievably loud. So what's actually happening here? Well, the truth is, your brain has been rewired. Our world is so hyper-stimulated, we're basically trained to expect a constant stream of little dopamine hits, from notifications, videos, you name it. And when that stream suddenly stops, silence doesn't just feel empty, it feels like an actual withdrawal. And you see this play out every single day. In those quiet moments, the radio's off, you're waiting in line, a conversation pauses, our automatic reaction isn't to just be there. Nope. It's to do something. Reach for the phone, put on a podcast, fill the space. Sound familiar? Yeah, I thought so. But here's the thing. This goes way deeper than just being bored. There's a much more powerful reason we run from the quiet. We're often using all that noise as a shield, kind of an emotional buffer that we build around ourselves. There's a psychological term for this. It's called cognitive avoidance. And it's exactly what it sounds like. We use distraction and noise to stop ourselves from running into unpleasant thoughts, feelings, or those internal conflicts we'd just rather not deal with. You just keep the volume of the world turned up so you never have to hear the whispers from inside. So let's just call it what it is. You've been using noise as a form of self-medication. All that background sound, the music, the news, the endless scrolling, it's not just entertainment. For a lot of us, it's a way to numb ourselves and avoid what's really going on inside. And a cost of this constant avoidance, it takes pretty much 100% of your energy. I mean, think about how exhausting it is to constantly have to curate your own distractions, to keep that wall of sound between you and your own mind. It's a full-time job. This brings us to a really powerful way to think about what we're actually avoiding. Let's talk about a house. Not your physical house, but the one you live in inside your mind. Just picture it for a second. Your whole consciousness is a house with lots of different rooms, and you spend most of your time in the comfortable ones, right? The living room of daily tasks, the kitchen of easy conversations. But you know there are other rooms, and some of those doors, they stay locked. Because when things finally get quiet, your mind's legacy systems start to boot up. Think of them like old, deep-seated programs. And behind those locked doors, that's where we keep the stuff we don't want to face. Old wounds, those huge unanswered questions about your purpose, and that tension between the person you are right now and the person you want to become. All that noise is what keeps those doors bolted shut. And this really gets to the core of it. That constant activity, all that busyness that you call being productive, it might not be rest at all. It might just be an elaborate way of hiding from whatever is waiting for you in the quiet rooms of your own house. So what do? Just kick down all the doors and face the chaos? Well, not exactly. The path forward is actually a lot gentler. It's about acceptance. It's about giving yourself permission. I absolutely love this quote. It's such a powerful reminder that you are allowed to be a work in progress. You don't have to pretend that you're fine all the time. There's a profound dignity in just letting yourself experience the full, messy, complex range of being human. So, the key here is a massive shift in perspective. Instead of treating your anxiety or your sadness like a problem that has to be solved, what if you just witnessed it? What if you started to see it as information, not a defect? And this is the magic phrase. The validation we're all looking for. It doesn't come from the outside world. It comes from the moment you can turn inward, look at your own darkness, and just say this to it. You acknowledge it without judgment. You just let it be. And this brings us back to the house. The new goal isn't to force a confrontation and break down the doors. It's just to learn how to sit in the hallway, to get comfortable enough with the silence, to be there, aware of the locked rooms, and to realize you're actually safe, even with them there. So I'll leave you with this to think about. That silence you've been so afraid of, it might hold the very thing you need to hear. What could you discover about yourself, about your path,
about your own sense of peace if you just gave yourself a moment to stop running and to truly listen.
I really need you to hear this. The voices that you might hear in the silence, they are not your enemies. They're actually messengers. So today, we're going to dive into what's really happening in those quiet moments and figure out what those messengers are trying to tell you. But look, before we get into any of that, let's just start right here. Take a breath and let this one sink in. You are absolutely allowed to be not okay. It is not a failure. It's just a fundamental, totally unavoidable part of being a human. And, that idea leads us perfectly into our first section, which I'm calling the heavy mask. We're going to talk about that huge unspoken pressure we all feel to constantly perform happiness for the world, and just how exhausting it is. This really gets to the heart of the problem, doesn't it? Society has this way of treating happiness like it's some kind of product we're all supposed to be selling. Smile more, be positive, post your highlight reel. But you're not a marketing campaign. You're a complex, messy, wonderful human being. And trying to curate that perfect happy image all the time, it's just draining. And you have to know this. If you feel this way, you are so far from being alone. We're talking about millions of people who feel this exact same pressure, this weird feeling that we're somehow wrong just for being real. So this isn't some personal failing on your part. It's a massive cultural weight we are all trying to carry. Well, this pressure to perform, it leads us right into our next big topic, when the noise stops. This is all about that moment, the one so many of us dread, when all the distractions finally fade away and it's just us, alone with our own minds. Do any of these sound familiar? That feeling when the music in your earbuds just cuts out, or your phone dies in the middle of a scroll, or a fun conversation just ends. There's this subtle panic, right? A tension that creeps into your shoulders. It's that sudden, unwelcome arrival of total silence.
And this is how so many of us are living now. We're basically drowning ourselves in a constant sea of white noise. Podcasts, music, TV shows, social feeds, anything to avoid the quiet. And why? Because on some level, we're terrified of what we might see when we look at our own reflection in that stillness.
And this chart just lays out the trade-off we're making so clearly. The validation we hunt for from all that external noise, it's always temporary. It's a quick fix and that's it. But the peace you can find in the silence, that's different. That's structural. It's a real foundation you can build on, not just some temporary patch job. Okay. This brings us to a huge turning point in how we think about all this, the messengers within. We are going to completely reframe that inner voice. Because what if those difficult thoughts aren't actually a sign that you're broken? So instead of thinking of them as dark thoughts or worrying that you're unstable, let's try a new definition. Let's call them messengers. They're just signals, really. Urgent messages from a part of you that's been ignored and needs your attention. They aren't the problem, they're just pointing to the problem. I want you to think of all that inner turmoil not as some defect, but more like static on a radio. It's just the sound of a soul that's been ignored for way too long. And in that static, you're not just hearing your fears, you're finally giving your own intuition the space it desperately needs to speak. And, the same thing goes for our feelings. They aren't enemies we have to conquer. Let's start seeing them for what they really are. Data points. Every single feeling, sadness, anxiety, even anger, it's just a piece of information, a clue on your journey toward becoming a more whole, complete person. So if these thoughts and feelings are just messengers and data points, what are we supposed to do with them? Well, the answer is in our next section. You are not broken. The whole idea here is to make a radical shift in perspective, to go from fighting our feelings to simply witnessing them. And this quote, this gets right to the absolute heart of it. We've been so conditioned to believe that any negative feeling has to be fixed or solved or just completely erased. But there is such a profound dignity in just letting yourself experience the full, messy, beautiful spectrum of what it means to be human. The goal isn't to fix, it's to witness. So how do we actually do this? Well, first, you witness. You just observe the feeling without judging it. Second, you stop that frantic, desperate search for a fix. And third, you acknowledge that your pain, your anxiety, your sadness, it's all valid, it's real. Because at the end of the day, you don't need to be fixed. You just need to be heard by yourself. And when we make this shift, something really incredible starts to happen. And that's what our final section is all about, your inner sanctuary. We're going to see how silence can transform from something you fear into a place of healing and refuge. In our crazy, noisy world, I think we've forgotten a really fundamental truth. Silence is where the true healing begins.
It's the only place where we can finally stop running, turn inward, and just listen to what those messengers have been trying to tell us all this time. And this is the ultimate payoff. This is the transformation. When you stop fighting the silence, when you stop trying to drown it out with noise, its very nature begins to change. It stops being this big, scary threat you have to defend against, and it becomes a sanctuary, a safe, quiet place where you can finally rest and recover. So, I'm just going to leave you with this final thought. The messengers are right there, waiting for you in the quiet. They have so much to tell you about what you need, where your boundaries are, and what your deepest truths are. The only question left is, if you stop fighting it, what will your silence tell you?
All right, let's talk about something really, really important today. We're going to dive into this one core idea, just giving yourself permission to feel. We're going to explore why it's not just okay, but actually essential to sometimes be, well, not okay. Let's just start with this question right here. I mean, really think about it for a second. Do you ever feel that deep, bone-weary exhaustion, the kind that comes from putting on a brave face day after day, when on the inside, you feel anything but fine?
You know what I'm talking about, right? It's this silent fatigue. It's that invisible weight that so many of us carry around. That heavy mask of, I'm okay, that we hold up for the world. It takes so much energy to project an image that just doesn't match what's really going on inside. And hey, if this is sounding familiar, I promise you, you are so far from alone. There is this huge cultural pressure to have it all figured out, to be right, to have the perfect, polished response. But that pressure, it almost always comes at the cost of just being real.
So what's the alternative then? It's all about this fundamental shift in our focus, moving away from trying to fix ourselves and towards simply accepting ourselves. It's about giving ourselves this radical permission to just be who we are, right in this very moment.
Oh, I love this quote. It just completely shatters this modern myth we're all sold. We are not products that need to be flawlessly marketed, right? We're messy, we're complicated, and that's what makes us human. It's such a powerful reminder that our lives aren't supposed to be a constant highlight reel. And this right here, this is the crucial reframing. Feeling sad doesn't mean you're broken. Experiencing anxiety does not mean you're failing, not at all. These are just data points on the vast, incredible spectrum of what it means to be alive. There's a real dignity in just allowing yourself to experience it all.
You know, we spend so much of our lives looking for validation from the outside world, from our friends, our family, social media. But the most powerful kind of validation, the kind that really truly heals, it doesn't come from out there. It starts with this quiet internal shift, when you finally turn inward and just face what's there.
And this is it. This is that moment of true self-compassion. Just imagine saying this to your own pain, to your own fear. You're not trying to change it. You're not trying to wish it away. You're simply acknowledging its presence. I see you, and it's okay that you're here. That is a revolutionary act of kindness to yourself.
You see, this one little act of kindness can build into a whole new way of being. And this isn't just some nice idea. It's a really practical shift in your perspective. You actually move from fighting a war with yourself to becoming a neutral, curious witness to yourself. And this comparison just lays it out so perfectly. On the left, you've got the enemy mindset. It's all about fixing, conquering, pushing against your feelings. But on the right, that's the observer mindset. You're not fighting anymore. You're just witnessing. You're seeking to understand your feelings, not as problems to be solved, but as valuable information, as data. So how do we actually learn to be this observer? Let's move this from theory into practice. Right now, today, I want to challenge you to become a 5-minute witness. And the steps are incredibly simple. Seriously, just set a timer for 5 minutes, sit in a chair, no phone, no book, no background noise, no distractions. Your only job is to just observe the thoughts that come up, without any judgment. Don't try to solve them, just witness them as they pass by. And you'll probably notice that itch to escape, to check your phone. Just notice it, and then let that pass too. So why does this matter so much? I mean, it's just 5 minutes, right? Well, in a world that is constantly demanding our attention, constantly pulling us outward, this is how you begin to reclaim your internal space. This simple 5-minute act is an incredibly powerful way to come back home to yourself, to create a little sanctuary inside your own mind. And that's really the ultimate goal here. It's not about trying to achieve some state of permanent blissful happiness. It's about returning to wholeness, a state where all parts of you,
The light and the dark are welcome, seen, and understood.
Let this powerful thought just sink in for a moment. We so often fill our lives with noise because we're afraid of the silence, afraid of what we might find in there. But what if that silence isn't some empty void to be scared of? What if it's the very path back to who you truly are? So here's the invitation. Practice being the observer of your own life, your thoughts, your feelings, everything. Don't let the noise of the world steal your soul. Be the observer. Find your quiet.
And that leads us to our final question. And this one isn't for me to answer. It's for you to discover. When you finally quiet all the noise and you just decide to observe, what do you think you'll find waiting for you there in the silence? Your journey starts right now.